Hello and welcome to TA Made Simple with Bob Cook, who's a transactional analyst, someone who practices it in the world of TA. And we're going to talk about an interesting technique in TA, and that is called two-chair work, Bob.
Correct. And do you want to say, Rory, what you just said off camera to me?
Yeah, well, off camera, I said, I said, kind of like quietly, isn't that Gestalt, Bob?
Yeah, and I answered back.
Probably promised us the answer to that.
Yeah, and I answered back. I wish I'd had a pound note or 50p, 50p for how many people have said that. Okay, this is my answer back. Now, everything really in psychotherapy goes back to Marino, or even before, which is Freud, but certainly Marino in psychotherapy terms. And Marino was in 1920s, 30s, was the father, if you like, of psychodrama.
Yes.
You can take most things back there. And the two-chair technique really goes back to Marino. Fritz Perls hijacked it, you're quite right, and created or used the two chairs, called them, upper dog and lower dog. And it's been used by many psychotherapy models for sculpturing and different things. And transaction analysis use this actionistic technique to help the clients externalize their conflicts.
So it's interesting with Marino because I've done some psychodrama training, and the statues and the sculpts are really interesting. A lot of people think that two-chair work is clients sitting, talking to an empty chair to someone who may have harmed them or wronged them in the past, and allows them to get out what they couldn't say in the there and then. Is that it, or is there another aspect to two-chair work?
Yes and no. So what you've just described is a fundamental part of projection work.
Yes.
And you've explained it very well. The other dimension, of course, and there's actually another dimension after that, but a dimension of this, is to help the person externalize the conflicts within themselves.
Right.
Which is different,
yes,
from projecting the other onto a chair. We're talking about the conflicts with themselves, or the different parts of themselves, like a headache, for example, or the agitation in their body, or the hopeless versus helpless part of the self, or the lost versus the found part of the selves. So it's also about helping the person talk to the internal conflicted parts of the self, as well as what you've just talked about, which is talking to the other.
Yeah, so there's a dialogical aspect to this. In other words, that someone can bring a part of themselves and pop it on the chair, maybe the angry self or the frightened self,
right.
and they could talk to it and try and make sense of it.
And where you're right, of course, which is what I meant in the third process, is that usually the conflicts between the parts of the self may well link back to the internalized parental introject.
Yeah, so at some point they may be talking to either a parent or what the parent has said to them or made them do.
Which they've internalized.
Yeah, so an example of that would be, Bob? Just give us an example.
So, you put your anger, let's take the one you've just talked about.
Okay.
You put your anger onto the chair.
Yeah.
And you just start getting angry. You start talking to the anger and say, angry, I'm really furious of how you've occupied my body. Now go and sit on the anger chair. They go and sit in the anger chair, and they realize they're starting to be angry just like their father did.
Right.
So they realize it's not their anger, actually. It's their internalized anger of their dad.
Yes.
So that's how it metamorphosize into the two.
Yes. So initially you separate it, and then they go and sit in the chair, and then they examine it and work out whose anger it is. It's fascinating, that. It's fascinating. That.
It's a wonderful technique. It's a wonderful technique for looking at impasses and stuck parts of the self. So hopeless part versus the helpless part. So then you start examining that. And it's very, very important in this sense, for a therapist to hear the dialogue externally. as well as the client hearing it externally,
Mm.
the therapist hears it externally for the first time, and that brings an extra dimension. So I think it's a wonderful technique for that. And simply what happens is exactly what you've just said. The person sits in the chair, they can put their projected part of themselves, or they can put their mum, their dad, their brother, whoever it is, and they can then say X to whoever it is, and then they are asked to role play the person. So say it is their dad, for example. So, okay, you would say to the client, now go and play your dad and just talk back as if you were your father. And if you can't think of what he would say, guess.
Mm.
So then they go back, they play the father, then you bring him back again to play the client and say, okay, you hear what the father said, now dialogue back to him. So you get this external dialogue which has been held or repressed for such a long time. That in itself is curative.
Mm.
But as the dialogue goes on, the client gets even more aware of the impasse or the stuck part, and the therapist gets a better dimension as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's fascinating, and I know the work of Marino, and it really is. I mean, for those who don't know what it is, it's sometimes he's the father of method acting, really, isn't he, Marino?
Yeah.
He's the father of method act, where people immerse themselves in characters and live as the characters, even though they're not being filmed. So yeah, it's
one more. Can I say one more?
Yeah, of course.
Feature of two-chair technique, which is really important. Often when clients come in and you start talking about what they've come for, whatever it's about, depression or self-esteem, they can get caught in cognitive analysis. In other words, they can start using intellectualization to go away or distract themselves from where they need to go, which is often their emotions. So by doing a two-chair technique through role play or whatever, you are helping the person develop maybe the emotional part of the self as a way through the repression.
Yes, because the cognitive analysis would be repressing, wouldn't it? It'd be it'd be giving thought solutions and distraction. It's fascinating, Bob. It's fascinating, and we now know, the world now knows that the empty chair technique is not
TA, it's TA as well, and it's a wonderful actionistic technique or methodology within psychotherapy, and transactional analysts use it at all. They don't claim, the historical title of it. It's an important technique amongst other techniques to help the person move through conflict.
Well, there you have it, Bob. Really interesting and some solid examples of how it's used. If you're watching this as a single video, check the playlist, because Bob has talked about huge amounts of TA theory, starting right at the beginning with the structural model of TA, gone all the way through the different schools of TA, and also talked about how TA is applied. So please see the entire playlist. It's a rich theme of knowledge.
And the next one will be treatment and diagnosis within a transaction analysis framework.
So there you have it. So Bob Cook, thank you very much.